Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us on The Last Word. My name is Sophia Wanuna. It's great to be back after a short break. Now, tonight, the police service is the center of our attention as we focus on the brutality we saw meted out against Kenyans yesterday during those demonstrations against the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission being led by the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy in the Central Business District. And of course, there was that clip, a man that was captured being clobbered by two officers. And as he lay motionlessly there on the ground, there were then reports that emerged from yesterday and today that he had in fact succumbed to his injuries. But KTN today caught up with a man who says he is in fact the man in the clip who was being beaten by the officers and that he is okay. He is not dead, as many have claimed. There was a hashtag that was running throughout yesterday and today, Justice for Ngatia, but he says his name is Boniface Manono. So I want us to listen to what he had to say when our crew caught up with him earlier on this evening.
Nilikuwa naenda Westland ku activate my account kwa Uber taxi. Nilipofika sikufaulu, activation haikufaulu, nikawa nimerudi nikuje University Way na mguu ndio niende Nyerere Road nikuje Serena nipande gari saa kuja Kibira kuona my uncle, at least anipatie mkopo wa pesa yenye ningeenda kutumia kwa nyumba. Nikiwa University roundabout ilikuwa around saa 6 ikielekea saa 7. Ile kitu niliona ni tear gas imeanguka mbele yangu, naye mimi nikawa nimekimbia kufuata Nyerere Road, nikakuta lori ya jeshi. Kukimbia St Andrews ndio nipande University hivyo mamlaka, nikakuta pia kuna wengine pale. Kwenda Uruwe nikaona wengine Royco Ridges.
So that is what, according to Boniface Manono, happened yesterday during those protests. And the picture right here on the super wall, this would be Boniface Manono lying down there. That is one of the officers. And this is a picture that has made headlines even in the international media. So I want to look at the live footage, rather the raw footage from what we saw unfold as he ran through the streets of Nairobi, the officers in hot pursuit and leading up to this particular image. just with us, just some of the scenes that were witnessed in the Central Business District right outside the Anniversary Towers, which is the headquarters for the IEBC yesterday. And of course, a great debate coming off of that. There are those who argued the man had it coming. He must have been running away for a reason. The police were after him because he must have done something, so he had it coming. However, there are those who've argued that was unreasonable force. That is not law enforcement. Let's hear what my guests this evening have to say on the show. Joining us is Patrick Gadhara, who's a blogger, right next to me on my immediate left. In the middle is Patricia Nyaundi. She's the CEO of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and Simiyu Werunga as well with us tonight, who's a security analyst, to help us understand, even in as far as the law, whether that is acceptable in certain situations. I'll begin with you, Gadhara, because first you criticized the media as far as how we told this particular story, but talk to me about what you make of the events unfolding from when we had these demonstrations to what we just saw right now, and also what he's saying now, that actually he's not dead, as many have said that happened.
I think from what we've seen, the footage, I mean, how the police behaved was pretty atrocious. I think when I first saw it, and this was yesterday, it was quite shocking to see the footage, and I thought that should have been really the main thrust of the reporting, essentially how the police were responding to this. I think over the course of the day today, we've seen the story kind of evolve, change, and actually one of the sad things was how it became captive to the sort of online partisan bloggers and commentators. So that some would be claiming there's a guy called Ngatia who's been killed. Others are saying, no, he's still alive. So there was sort of a push and pull, and everybody trying to own the story, if you will. I thought some were trying to sort of make it a story about how the media misreports. Others are trying to insist that, no, it's actually about police brutality and stuff.
And political capital as well.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. So I thought in all of that, we're really missing the essence of it, which is essentially the fact that we've got a police that is supposed to be reforming, but is very much behaving like we were back in the 90s when they were still beating up protesters and stuff.
And Patricia, before the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, it was the police force, it's how it was known, and now it's a police service. Is this service to the nation?
Not at all. I think it's really a betrayal of the struggle that went into making sure all the work that has been invested into the reform of the National Police Service has just crumbled. When you look at that video, I think the only thing that will salvage it is the response of the leadership in the National Police Service. If they respond firmly to confirm to us that this is not really how the National Police Service is going to operate going forward.
Yeah.
So I think nothing short of disciplinary action, including the termination of the officers who are seen to have been involved in this, would persuade one that this is not the position of the National Police Service, and we are actually dealing with an institution that has been reformed. Yeah. Anything short of that, then we would have to start thinking of it again as the Kenya Police Force.
Indeed. Werunga, before I bring you in, I want us to listen as well too, because you talk about how the response will be following this event. The PS Interior spoke about this. We heard from former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, as well as Duale, who's the leader of Majority. Let's listen to what these leaders had to say, and also we'll bring you in just in as far as how we've seen the police service now fare in the past several years.
We've just been informed that one of the demonstrators yesterday, who was beaten very brutally by the police, has succumbed to the injuries sustained yesterday.
The person who is writing that would want to believe that police attacked a man who died. It's juicy that way. It sells. I hear very confident that it was the man who told you. I mean, we have to even sustain that this is the actual person. But
the co-leader Raila Odinga's political career has been punctuated by episodes of large-scale violence and routine anarchy. If you look at his history, it seems that it's not done yet with the Kenyans. And we are asking Honorable Raila Odinga, how much blood is enough to be shed?
Right, and that is just how we've seen this discourse, the various directions it has taken as far as the leaders commenting. Let's hear from you, Werunga, because there's what, of course, the politicians will say following that, the officials in state. You have been in security circles for a long time.
Yes.
Are people unfairly criticizing the police?
I don't think so. Unfortunately, some of us, we used to burn our midnight oil to get these reforms. And I personally and many other people participated in the working on the drafting of the new police laws that actually created the service in which we are in. But I want to tell you this, majority of our police officers have actually are on the road to good reforms. What I want to say is that fellow we saw in that clip, in fact, we should not call him a police officer. That is a beast in police uniform. Because I cannot imagine where first the leader in that chaos, why it was not even there. Because the way the police is made is such that there must be a hierarchy of leadership.
Yes.
And for people to watch this guy brutalizing this Kenyan for close to 3 to 4 minutes, and we didn't see any response, it shows you how disorganized that scenario was. Because I will tell you this, a properly trained police force, they are taken through the mechanisms of crowd control. Now, there's a flip side of crowd control where now it becomes anarchy, and therefore they turn into anti-riot squad. Now, that movement from crowd management and crowd control into anti-terror or anti-riot mechanism is what our police don't seem to have. Because I expect the leadership of the police service to be so well organized that in the moment they turn this from a crowd management mechanism into anti-riot system, the leadership should be such that every police leader must be in charge of the squadron or the section that they've been given. What we are noticing here is that pillar number 4 in the police reforms system, which is professionalization, I think has not taken root properly. And we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans, have we wasted our time and money to make our police service professional? We know many have become fairly professional, but this is very unfortunate. And I think the office of Madam here and the rest that are given mandate by the law to ensure that the rights of Kenyans, professionalization of the Kenya Police Service is done well so that we don't repeat what we are seeing year in, year out.
And we'd want to hear from you at home as well as you watch this conversation tonight, and as far as whether you think the police in investigating this particular matter, because the Inspector General of Police said they'd do that, will actually be able to get to the bottom of it. So get involved. KTN Kenya, or rather KTN News, is where we are running that Twitter poll. Let's your voice count tonight, and I'll be sampling your views towards the end of this live show. Patrick, it is not the first time we've witnessed this kind of scenes. So for you, what does this say? Because I pour on one hand and we'll listen to the chairman earlier who came out saying they'll investigate, it was wrong. We've had the US government as well come out to criticize the same. So across the board, we're hearing people saying this is wrong. Why is that happening in 2016?
Well, I think Werunga spoke about the reforms that are going on, and one of the pillars of the reform is accountability, both internal and external accountability. And I think that's primarily where we're failing. I think as a nation we've tended to perceive police reform as simply an issue of welfare, of improving welfare for the police, giving them better equipment and stuff. But if we actually read reports like the Ransby report of 2009, it talks of the culture of policing and the fact that the police, from when they were set up in the colonial days, were set up as a, I think the report calls it a citizen containment squad. So essentially it was to contain the people and protect the government from essentially from its own people. That culture hasn't changed. And you even see it in how they approach demonstrations. is not really with a view to facilitate the ability of Kenyans to exercise their rights, which is really what the
Yeah,
police should be
to
doing.
picket.
Yeah, and you see it actually from the top, because it starts even with people like the CS and Kaiseri, you know, and all his sort of bombastic, chest-thumping rhetoric, which then filters down. So I think that entire culture needs to be dismantled, and we need to reform the police directly, you know, to start from the bottom up. I know that they had a reform package that they were supposed to be rolling out from beginning of 2016, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
You know, but it seems to me that that hasn't yet taken root. So we are still in a situation where we've got the police essentially that we had in the 90s, but with better equipment, with big guns, I mean big cannons, water cannons,
Yes, the batons.
with armor and stuff, you know, so they can actually beat us up much more effectively, you know, in essence. But there's one other thing I wanted to mention, and this goes off what the PS was saying, Kibicho. He makes it seem as if simply because this guy did not die, that the beating wasn't that bad. Actually, that is really wrong.
Right.
You know, the fact that we didn't even see an attempt to arrest this person. You know, all they wanted to do was beat up. And it's not just him. I mean, in the clip, you saw many other people, and there were shouts, "Piga, piga." You know, and the police sort of understand their role as essentially beating up people, not going in and enforcing the law, arresting people who are breaking it, you know, and producing them in court. It's essentially meting out street justice to them
Okay.
there and then.
Then, and I want to hear from both of you, for those who said, you know what, he had it coming. Why was he running? There was an image of a stone in his back pocket saying that, you know, many people were, you know, had shops were looted, many people were attacked as well. So did some of these demonstrators have it coming? When the police see some of these things happening, shouldn't they be able to stop it in the way they best
I'll
see
say
fit?
this, and this came from the police themselves, that they had some information, there was a counter group coming.
Yes.
So they wanted to disperse these ones before the other group came because they were fearing that something might happen. But I want to go back to the same issue, Sophia. The police service is trained to contain crowds. I know the last article on crowd management they've been using was one of 1956. I don't know that they've changed. I know they're now working on new police standing orders and whatever.
Which I will shortly take our viewers through, yes.
Yes. Now, the issue is not even, I agree with him, the issue is not whether he died or he did not die. The issue is how did our police manage the situation? And a properly trained police service will know when to transcend from crowd management and control to anti-riot. And in most cases, you'll find it is so seamless that by the time people realize that things are turning bad, they've already contained the riot and they have removed the crowd from areas where they think they can cause havoc. So my biggest problem with our police service, and we've been in this game for long,
Yes.
we just shudder what we are seeing on the screen. Yet these are same police officers we work together, we've trained together, we've taken through processes of change, and we still see this.
All right.
My biggest problem, leadership. Where is the leadership of police officers? Because we have corporals, we have sergeants, we have inspectors, we have chief inspectors. We never saw, except one who went to speak to some guy. And to me, that speaks volume.
Okay.
Yes.
That speaks volumes, and we'll get to what you were talking about, standing orders and
Yes.
what laws are in place to be able to ensure they conduct themselves properly. Before we listen to the IPOA chair, do you think some of these institutions that have been put in place to ensure checks and balances are failing the police and Kenyans?
No, I think what we are grappling with is a culture of impunity. So
They should ensure impunity doesn't happen. IPOA, shouldn't they?
Yes, but what they are dealing with is impunity has been institutionalized. So whereas IPOA in exercise of its mandate really relies on the leadership of the police, for instance, to cooperate and take action in line with the recommendations of IPOA, when as an institution you make recommendations that are then ignored, what these institutions are compelling, institutions such the oversight bodies to do is to now start employing more aggressive methods. Ordinarily, the best approach towards infusing human rights is one that allows the institution itself to embrace these principles and grow into them. But what we think is happening is that the institutions require us to take the hard approach, where in fact you are having officers charged in court, you're having them dismissed from offices. Ideally, really what should be happening is continuous consultation between these institutions and the oversight agencies. But what is happening is that some of the institutions have encouraged an attitude where they are in continuous tension with the oversight bodies. You don't get information, you don't get follow-up on the recommendations that you have sought, you are unable to see them when you ask to see them. So this is just a big impunity bubble that needs to be burst.
Briefly before we get into the chair.
I think what Madam is not trying to say here, we have also a problem of funding. You see, funding can be used to diminish the capacity of all oversight institutions that we have. We know for some time before the amendment in 2015, there was a serious assault on the National Police Service Commission. There was a serious assault on the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. And then the whole system has decided completely to disregard the Internal Affairs Unit. So it is not even about the people who are in these institutions. It's about a systematic process of diminishing their capacity through funding, through lack of cooperation, and complete disregard for the law. So we must look at it in the totality of that manner.
Right, and let's listen to the chair of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, what he had to say earlier today on this brutality. And also after that, we'll be looking at what does the law says and why aren't they not enforcing it to the letter.
It doesn't matter whether members of the public are engaging on illegality or not. The police response itself must be within the confines of the law. In as much as the members of the public, some of them may engage in illegalities, there's clear process that the police are supposed to use in reining in on any errant members of the public.
It shows how low we are, we can get to a country in terms of the way we manage the security matters.
Nairobi Police Commander Japheth Kome had already issued a stern warning.
Let them attempt. They will face the music. As you can see, we are set.
Any officer or officers involved in any misconduct, any kind of a breach of law or regulation in terms of yesterday's riot query, action is going to be taken against him.
All right, so we've heard there from the IPOA boss, the police commandant in Nairobi as well. We want to look at what the law says, and the Kenya Police Act, in as far as duties, powers, and privileges of police officers are concerned, talks about maintenance of law and order, as well as preservation of peace, protection of life and property, apprehension of offenders, and perform functions under the overall direction, supervision of the Commissioner of Police, and shall be impartial and objective. Note there, it talks about Commissioner of Police. We have since moved from the dispensation where you have Commissioners of Police. Let me take you to the next board where it talks about no police officer shall be subject, or rather shall subject any person to torture or to any other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. Any police officer who contravenes the provisions of this section shall be guilty of a felony. So that's the Kenya Police Act. I want to now take you to proposals that were made 2 years ago in 2014. That's the Police Service Standing Orders, and this was under the leadership of then IG Kimayo. These are yet to be enforced, and yet they are quite elaborate on details, some of the security analysts have said. So in as far as restriction on the use of force, which is what we're focusing on tonight, a police officer shall always attempt to use non-violent means first, and force may only be employed when non-violence means are ineffective, and that has been part of the debate as we move on to the next board, that at the point then you have the person, assailant, quote unquote, on the ground, or whoever you're pursuing, then do they pose a serious threat as to inflict force. In terms of proportionality, what kind of force should be meted out? The force shall be proportional to the objective that is sought to be achieved, the seriousness of the offense, and the resistance of the person against whom it is used. Again, looking that against the clip we just saw, this, of course, going against the actions of the police for sure. And when the use of force results in injuries, the law, proposed law here, the draft 2014, the police officers present shall provide medical assistance immediately. We saw when this man lay there motionlessly, the officers just walked away, moved on to the next, and shall notify relatives as well, is also one of the provisions there. And talks also about reporting of the force, that a police officer who uses any form of force shall immediately report to the officer's superior, explaining the circumstances. So far, we've not heard that this officers actually did report the same. The IG has said they will look into whether the law was broken in this particular instance. Reporting to Independent Policing Oversight Authority, a police officer who makes a report to this body shall, as we move on to the next, it's not a complete statement there, notify, rather shall immediately report to the officer's superior, explaining the circumstances, and in as far as reporting to IPOA, shall secure one, the scene of the act for purposes of investigations, and notify the next of kin, their relatives or friends of the death or injury as soon as reasonably practical, is what this draft proposal has. So also, of course, the IG has said they will be investigating. The POA as well have said they'll be looking into the matter. But finally, failing to report the provisions here, it shall be a disciplinary offense for a police officer to fail to report in accordance with these regulations. So again, these are proposals. This is a draft that has never quite been implemented. 2 years it has been lying there, and those are some of the issues we'll discuss when we come back from the break. But we'll also seek to look back 1997, which is almost about a decade ago. Reverend Timothy Njoya was also subjected to clobbering, bludgeoning, if you like, by police officers. So 20 years on, has anything changed? Well, we'll talk about that when we come back. Please do stay with us right here on The Last Word.